want to start off by giving our praises, glory, and honor to Yahawah, Bahasham, Yahawashi, Bahasham, Rakakudash. And this is just going to be a quick little lesson for you so-called African Americans, or those who think they are such, who like to claim Africa as your homeland. And this is actually a message from an African, a Hamite, from the Kikuyu people in Africa, which are a Bantu people from central Kenya. And I'm going to let you listen to her, and then we're going to come back and provide some commentary and some precepts. All right?
You know what I find absolutely hilarious? When an American raised in America, whose culture is American, tries to Afri-explain Africa to an African. Yet, if I asked you to name me 5 countries in Africa, off the top of your head, you probably can't, not including South Africa. But you'll be the first one to claim a continent about which you have no idea. You probably don't even understand your own history or where your ancestors came from. You probably can't tell me much about the transatlantic slave trade now, can you? Or which countries were involved in it. But you'll be the first one to gatekeep African culture from people who don't look like me, which makes you a racist. Plain and simple. How about less claiming, more learning? That's my American husband with German ethnicity learning about my Kikuyu culture during our traditional wedding ceremony Arurashio back in Kenya. That's how you embrace a culture. You learn about it. You don't claim it. Africa does not belong to you. We are not a color. We are not colors. No one is a color. You know what I find absolutely hilarious? When an American raised in America, whose culture is American, tries to Afri-explain Africa to an African. Yet, if I asked you to name me 5 countries in Africa, off the top of your head, you probably can't, not including South Africa. But you'll be the first one to claim a continent about which you have no idea. You probably don't even understand your own history or where your ancestors came from. You probably can't tell me much about the transatlantic slave trade now, can you? Or which countries were involved in it. But you'll be the first one to gatekeep African culture from people who don't look like me, which makes you a racist. Plain and simple. How about less claiming, more learning? That's my American husband with German ethnicity learning about my Kikuyu culture during our traditional wedding ceremony Arurashio back in Kenya. That's how you embrace a culture. You learn about it. You don't claim it. Africa does not belong to you. We are not a color. We are not colors. No one is a color.
So there you heard the young lady raise some serious points, right? She goes into the fact that Americans, meaning Black Americans, who have never been to Africa, who don't know nothing about Africa, who can't even name 5 countries in Africa, claiming a continent. And that's why when we go out on the streets and we interview people and we try to educate them about their history, one of the first things we try to establish is that they don't know their history and that they are not African. But you have the Kemetic community and maybe some of the Islamic community and a bunch of just Negroes in America and in the Caribbean and all over the world claiming Africa. But yet, like the young lady says, they probably can't even name 5 countries in Africa. Because one of the things we also tell them when they say, well, I'm African, we ask them to name some countries in Africa. And they really don't have a clue, like the young lady said. She said, you guys don't have any idea about Africa. And you don't even understand your own history, which again is true. You see? She also said that you try to Afri-explain Africa to Africans, which means you try to take a position of knowledge about Africa, which you don't really have. She says we don't even understand our own history. And see, if you don't understand your history, like we went into in other lessons, you don't understand anything. The first thing you need to understand is who you are. You see that? And she goes into the transatlantic slave trade, which most of us don't really know much about. But the fact of the matter is, the children of Israel are the ones who were predominantly on those slave ships, not the Kikuyu people. You know, you can't help but observe the fact that her sentiments in terms of looking down on so-called blacks, particularly blacks in America, are the same kinds of sentiments that you find black American so-called women, divestors, if you will, so-called black women who are in some kind of sexual relationship with a so-called white man. They have the same sentiments that this woman has. Because, and ladies, you have to remember that whoever you lying down with, you download in his DNA into your system. You see that? And that's a whole other lesson in and of itself, which I don't care to get into. But the fact of the matter is, whatever ideologies and attitudes and perspectives that the man who you're laying down with has, you're going to have them too. But she says that you black Americans are the first ones to gatekeep African culture from people who don't look like her. Translation: you black Americans are the first ones who try to gatekeep Africa from the so-called white man. She's basically defending her oppressor. You see? She even goes on to say that you are a racist for trying to gatekeep African culture, or trying to claim African culture, or trying to suggest that the white man has less right to the continent than you, a so-called black American, has. Y'all see that? She says you should do less claiming and more learning. And here I agree with her. I agree with her. Instead of trying to jump up and say, well, I'm African, and you don't even know nothing about Africa, right? You should get into your Bible and learn your history, like we've been trying to tell y'all. You know, then you see a little section with her at her German American husband's feet. You know, looks like she's cleaning his shoes or something. I don't know what that was, but you know, that speaks volumes in and of itself. But then she says that's how you embrace your culture. You learn about it. And that's true too. I agree with that. You embrace your culture and you learn about it. Then she says Africa does not belong to you. And she's absolutely right. You so-called blacks, Hispanics and Native Americans, particularly you so-called blacks who don't know your nationality through willful ignorance because the internet is there. And the reason why the Lord even had the internet come about is because he needs to get this message out to all of us. You know, everybody have the internet. So there's no excuse for not knowing your history. You check it out. Then she goes on to say again, Africa does not belong to you. We are not a color. And then she made some kind of snide remark in her native language. She probably said, you stupid Negroes, with her Edomite husband in the background cheering her on. All right? So there's that. Now we're going to get some scriptures. The first scripture I want to get is Zephaniah 2:12. It says, ye Ethiopians also, ye shall be slain by my sword. Because part of knowing your history as an Israelite is understanding that the Africans, such as this young lady's tribe, right, were instrumental in selling us to the so-called white man. And because they also had us in slavery after we fled into Africa from Jerusalem after 70 AD. You see, that's your real history right there that you don't get. But these Ethiopians and the other Hamites, they also are going to be slain by the Lord, and they're going to be our slaves. And for further reference, you could get Isaiah 45:14 and Isaiah 43:3. Next, I want to get Jeremiah 17:4, because the young lady said we don't know our history and we don't know nothing, right? Which is the truth for most of us. This is the book of Jeremiah 17:4, speaking about the Israelites. And thou, even thyself, shalt discontinue from thine heritage that I gave thee. And I will cause thee to serve thine enemies in the land which thou knowest not. For ye have kindled a fire in mine anger, which shall burn forever. So we lost our heritage. 2 Esdras chapter 2:7 says, let them be scattered abroad among the heathen. Let their names be put out of the earth, for they have despised my covenant. Here again we see a prophecy referring to the children of Israel being scattered abroad and losing our names. Your last name or your surname, that don't belong to you. That belongs to your slave master. Isaiah 1 and 3 says, the ox knoweth his owner, and the ass his master's crib. But Israel doth not know. My people doth not consider. We don't consider that we are the greatest people that God ever made. The reason why the world even was made in the first place was for the children of Israel. Like it talk about in 2nd Esdras chapter 6, right? We don't consider none of that. We just consider, well, oh, I'm an African. It's like, really? Which country in Africa you come from? Which nation in Africa you come from, brother, sister? And that's like a common occurrence every time we go out on the street to teach our people the truth. But they don't consider. Most of them don't care. But this little young lady here from the Kikuyu people in central Kenya brought out a message for you. And it's a good message. You see, it shows you a lot into the attitudes that the native African tribes have for our people. And it also shows you how so-called white supremacy has permeated the whole earth. You check it out. It's not just America alone. Black people, so-called, all over the globe worship this devil that the Bible speaks of. You see? Now, there's some people that are going to try to say, well, you know, the Edomites were done away with and this and that and the next and blah, 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 you know, because they don't want to accept the fact that their lover is going to be destroyed. This is Ecclesiastes 4:16. There is no end of all the people, even of all that have been before them. They also that come after shall not rejoice in him. Surely this is also vanity and vexation of spirit. So here we see that all the people, all the nations of the earth, from since after the flood, right? These nations are still here today, including the Edomites, who try to change their name. Now, we know who they are. The so-called white man, the so-called white races. But allow me to put a little caveat there, because we know pursuant to Jeremiah 12 and 9, you know, and the fact of Deuteronomy 28:64 and also Luke 21:24, that part of us being scattered into all nations as the Israelites, the nation of Israel is like a speckled bird. Some of us are going to look like the other nations because this is not a color thing or a hair texture thing. This is a bloodline pursuant to Numbers 118. So there are some of the Israelites who are going to look like a so-called Edomite. You understand? Just thought I'd put that out there. So if there's a so-called white person listening to this, right, or a so-called Hamite or a so-called Japanese or a so-called Chinese or whoever you may be, you might be an Israelite, you know, and with that possibility available to you, keep the laws, statutes, and commandments to the best of your ability. And may the Lord have mercy on you. May the Lord have mercy on me. Because we don't know for sure who we are. We believe through the Spirit that we are the children of Israel, pursuant to Romans 8:16. You understand? Our people do fit the curses historically, but individually, we have to have faith. You see, and even if we're not part of the Israelites, and I'm speaking for myself here, I ain't got nothing better to do except try to be pleasing unto my Creator. And that's just that. And we give all praises, glory, and honor to Yahawah, Yahawashi, for life and everything else that goes along with it. So he gave us more than we deserve to begin with. So why not try to obey him to the best of our ability? You check it out. So in regards to all the other nations outside the nation of Israel, they formed a confederacy. And part of the confederacy that was undertaken, according to Psalms 83, where it says that all the nations would come together and make us forget who we are, right? The children of Israel. Part of that was to change all the names of the nations. Change them from their original names, which the Bible has, into these different names that we have today. And also to change the nationality into a nativity. But being a native of some place is not the same as being of that nation. You see? So for instance, a Chinaman born in Belize is still a Chinaman, you know, 24/7. He might have a Belizean passport, But Belize is not a bloodline. Belize is not a nationality in the true sense. It's just a country. We as so-called black people scattered throughout the four corners of the earth, we claim onto our nativity or the place of our birth and try to claim that as our nationality. We don't know our nationality. That's why we make these lessons, to wake y'all up. But it says in Isaiah 25:7, and he will destroy in this mountain the face of the covering cast over all people, and the veil that is spread over all the nations. So this is what's happening right now through the prophets of the Most High, Yahawah, Sham, Yahawashi. He's destroying the face of the covering cast over all the people, and the veil that is spread over all nations, so that you can come to the understanding that we are the children of Israel, the chosen people of the Most High living power, a special people above all nations. And that's pursuant to Deuteronomy 7:6, 10:15, 14:2, and 26:19, and also Exodus 19:5 and 6. So if you ever wondered why the other nations hate you so much, including the Africans, well, now you have the answer. So it's high time to wake up out of sleep, like you talk about in Romans 13 and 11. And like we went into in previous lessons, if you don't know your nationality, you don't know anything. If you don't even know your name, right? You don't know nothing at all. So with that, we want to give our praises, glory, and honor to Yahawah, Bahasham, Yahawashi. Shalom.